Welcome back to the MizzouToday Show on 3 and Rivals. Kenny Van Doren, that's Kyle McAreavy. I'm going to get it right from moving forward, Kyle. I've known you since September of 2024, and for the longest time I've been mispronouncing your name. And after last week's show, our first show on the YouTube channel, you pointed out that I did mispronounce your name. But we're going to get right into it. If you're watching with us on the YouTube, you see it right away. Beau, Pribula, and Sam Horn both set to play week 1. That decision came today. Eli Drinkwitz said at his post fall camp press conference on Tuesday that he was going to have a decision made within 24 hours. We kind of were thinking, maybe this is a decision on who the starting quarterback will be. I think he specifically kind of, beats around the bush. He's good with the media in saying that, he wasn't going to say I was going to name a starter in 24 hours. He was going to come to a quarterback decision. And that's exactly what Eli Drinkwitz did. I'm going to throw it right over to you, Kyle, and just what you kind of expected out of this, because I think a lot of people were kind of leaning more on Beau Pribula to be named the starting quarterback for the Missouri Tigers, and just maybe some expectations going into week 1 with both of these guys under center and in shotgun.
Yeah, I mean, first off, this was kind of the decision that I think has been, in the making for a couple of weeks now. I think this was the expected play, was that both would get a chance to go out there for week 1. When Drinkwitz said that yesterday, there was a follow-up, and he specifically said, I'm going to announce what we're going to do. There was not I'm going to announce the starting quarterback. There was not this is what it's going to be going forward. It was just what we're going to do will be known in 24 hours. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure a lot of fans are a little disappointed, and some were hoping after, all of us tweeted out that quote yesterday that a starter would get announced. But I mean, we don't even know for sure who's going to get the first reps in week 1. I would still lean toward Beau Pribula at this point, but I think that is where it's going to be a little bit telling, is kind of similar to the 2023 competition with Brady Cook and Sam Horn. It's going to be, whoever goes out there first is probably in the lead at least. And I would expect probably a similar setup, first half, second half. Maybe he'll do first quarter, second quarter, if, the lesson was learned from that last experience in 2023 of, like, if you're doing first half, second half in a game like this, whoever's going out there for the second half doesn't really have a chance to operate a regular offense.
What concerns do you kind of have when you go into a quarterback battle like this? I don't think it's as comparable to 2023 with Brady Cook and Sam Horn. I think there was a lot more expectations behind Brady Cook being the starting quarterback, and maybe some would have said Sam Horn didn't really get a shot at it. And I think it was, a completely correct decision. I mean, Mizzou went on to win the Cotton Bowl. That was a 10-win season or 11-win season for the Tigers that year. But when you do this, when you have one where it's a little bit tighter of a battle, and even Eli Drinkwitz has mentioned it's one of the toughest decisions he's made as a quarterbacks coach, offensive coordinator, head coach in his entire career. What concerns do you maybe have when you don't really have this settled before week 1? And I think, maybe a positive is, though, that this is, you're playing Central Arkansas. It's not like you're going to have to go out and face a Power 4 opponent right away.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's an issue in week 1 with doing this, right? Like you said, Central Arkansas, Ahmad Hardy should be able to just run it against them pretty easily if you just want to do that all day, and then the defense should control the game on the other side. So, it's a fine opportunity to get a look at both of them if you're going to try to operate a real offense and see what both are able to do. The issue is if this isn't decided by the day after the week 1 game and you're going into week 2 and the border war without it being known. And, that's an important game. It's one of the more important ones on the schedule. You need to know who the team's rallying behind at that point. I think, the issue I would come up with of having a quarterback competition go this long in the first place is just there's less reps with the ones. I mean, especially if it's Beau, he's only been here since January. So he just doesn't have all of those reps with his receivers and with these linemen and the starting center, with Tollison. Sam Horn at least has some of that just from being the backup for a couple of years, but there's a lot of new pieces that you're fitting around. It takes time to get chemistry down, all of that type of stuff. So if you're splitting reps with the ones, you're just taking time away for that chemistry to really develop.
That's where my concerns kind of go too, is, splitting those reps. And I mean, how much does that kind of affect just, mentally the quarterback's trying to get into a rhythm, like you were saying, especially with a guy that's coming back from Tommy John surgery and someone who transferred in the winter. And, maybe it's not the best if you see that competition go into the Kansas game. I think by after the Central Arkansas game, you kind of want your decision made on who's going to be leading that offense moving forward. I think that's enough just for the quarterback talk for right now, unless anything comes up when we're talking about some other position groups, Kyle. But let's talk about the offensive line. It sounds like everything is set there. I mean, what can you tell us about that unit?
Yeah, so when we talked about it last week, we kind of had the idea of what it was going to look like. Caden Green has moved over to left tackle. Dominic Giudice is at left guard. Connor Tollison at center. Curtis Spiegler has been taking reps with the ones the past couple of weeks at right guard. And then Wake Forest transfer Keegan Trost at right tackle, or Trost, excuse me. Seems like that's the setup now. Drinkwitz said yesterday that if they were to play today, Curtis Spiegler is the right guard, which then locks in Caden Green at left tackle because Giudice is over at left guard. He also said Tristan Wilson is probably the backup right guard, which I find interesting just because he's also the backup center and apparently also the backup left guard. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing when you're looking at, a sign of Wilson's development. That's great. He's your best interior lineman, able to play all three spots. What worries me a little bit there is I'm kind of I want my backup center to just be on the bench. And you've already got Giudice, who's another backup center playing left guard. I just, as a coaching philosophy, I wouldn't want my three center options all on the field next to each other at the same time. If Wilson was to go in at right guard, I just am a little risk averse when it comes to that. It's kind of, I'm a baseball guy throughout my life, and I feel that way about catcher too. I don't want my backup catcher playing first base. I want my backup catcher on the bench in case something happens. I want my backup center on the bench in case something happens. But that's kind of how it's worked out to this point, is Piegler is going to be the starting right guard unless something changes in the next couple of days, and Wilson will be the backup kind of across the interior.
And when you look at that too, I mean, you're speaking my language there with the baseball stuff. I'll say that. But when you talk about maybe those plugins, we're going to get a little bit deeper into the depth chart right before the Central Arkansas game next week. But behind Caden Green at left tackle, I mean, do you have any concerns if something happens where Caden Green maybe has to move back in to left guard? If something happens where Dominic Giudice has to move to center, and then you're kind of relying on the two guys that play left tackle that really just probably didn't have the best fall camp, because in reality, the competition between them got knocked off, and they moved Caden Green out to left tackle?
I wouldn't say I'm necessarily worried about it. I think from everything that we're hearing now, it sounds like Caden Green's just been working back toward getting out to left tackle. He was a left tackle coming out of high school and got pushed into guard just for comfortability reasons as a freshman at Oklahoma. And then last year coming in, learning a new scheme, a new conference, all that stuff, just stayed where he was more comfortable. But he's been working throughout spring and throughout summer in periods that media didn't get to watch, out at left tackle, and I guess also at center and right guard. But I wouldn't say I'm super worried about it. It seems like he's going to stay out there, and if something were to happen to Giudice at left guard, it would be Wilson coming in then at that point. And, there's guys across the two deep. If something were to happen to Caden Green, you got the two guys who are competing out there in Javen Richardson and Johnny Williams, who could both reasonably take over. I think the move was more predicated on Curtis Piegler really showing a lot of development through these last few weeks, and Tristan Wilson too, showing that the better move would be to trust them on the interior versus Richardson and Williams on the outside.
Before we get into just a little bit more of the conversations, just from fall camp and fall camp wrap up, we got a quick ad read from our sponsors at Rhoback. Rhoback Activewear. There's only one way to describe Rhoback: best fit, best feel. For those who aren't familiar with Rhoback, they are completely changing the game with their incredibly comfortable activewear. Rhoback has released so many items within their new licensed game day collection, and it's our favorite. You can even look, if you're watching with us on the YouTube. Kyle and I have our Rhoback shirts on right now with novel polo designs and clean hoodie and Q-zip designs for some of your favorite schools. It's definitely worth checking out. Nobody else on the market is pairing these levels of custom designs with this quality of activewear. Rhoback's everyday shorts or their Delta Performance pants are the perfect pairing as well. Might have to get a couple of those for game days this fall. Kyle, they're both super comfortable, have an elastic waistband, and great fabric that is made to have the appearance of a nice short look, but the comfort for a day on the move. Roback has also been proudly leading the NIL charge, having signed partnerships with multiple college football stars, past and present, and are becoming the go-to brand for college athletics across the country. For those Mizzou fans watching with us on the YouTube, you can see those. Some of those are back in stock right now. The Mizzou Faroe Field, the Mizzou Game Day. I've had some friends and some Mizzou colleagues looking at those over the past couple of weeks. And unfortunately, that Q-zip from Mizzou is out of stock still, but it looks like the hoodie is back in stock in a select size. So you can use that code MIZ20 on roback.com for a generous 20% off all the new for all new customers through the end of this week. That's spelled Roback, RHOBACK.com. That's 20% off all performance polos, shorts, and more with code MIZ20. Okay, Kyle, back to just talking about some fall camp updates. I think one guy we want to hit on real quick. We don't talk about walk-ons too often. I don't even say like on this show. It's only our second episode, but just in general, what can you tell us just about Logan Muckey? It was a little bit of a surprising story to hear that he did have a bout with cancer, and he beat cancer this spring. Gets named a captain for special teams. It's a unit that really wants to take a step forward and not be kind of a thorn in the game that it has the last couple of years. What have you just learned about Logan over the past week?
Yeah, I mean, there was an interesting thing. It kind of popped up at a couple of open practices that media were at. You could hear, Logan Muckey would make a play on the hands team or something, dive on the ball, and Drinkwitz would run around the field with his mic that we were always standing right next to the speakers, and he'd just go, "He beat cancer. He beat cancer." He'd get all excited about it. And because Muckey got named a captain, we got to talk to him yesterday for about 7 or 8 minutes. And he told us, kind of the whole story. He had a thyroid cancer, had a nice little mark across the base of his neck from getting surgery. So he got diagnosed back in April, he said, got the surgery to remove, the mass in May, and has just been on the road to recovery. And, really said it kind of affected his outlook and everything. Doesn't want to, ever take a day for granted anymore. He wants to just enjoy the time he's got left with his team. Showered with love throughout the summer, everybody supporting him. He was very thankful, it seemed, for everything that the program has done for him and the community here that he's built over his time here. So I put out a story this morning on it that I think people really like to read. It was wanted to make sure I did it with respect and was done properly. I think it came out pretty good. But yeah, it's just a really great story. And I know, a couple of the other guys we talked to yesterday talked about Muckey and what he means to the team and how nice it's been to have him back. And I think it was Caden Green, who was high school teammates with him too, said, like, if Drinkwitz hadn't told anybody, nobody would have known. He never complained. He never took a day off. He was just back out there every day. Same guy he was before, working hard and, doing whatever he can for whatever he's able to for the team.
I saw former Mizzou linebacker and captain Chad Bailey posted about it too. He was pretty excited just kind of watching that video and just excited for Logan, which kind of makes you think, even as a walk-on a couple of years ago, he didn't have his first reception until the bowl game last year. He was still a presence around this team. And it's still good, in this era of college football where, a lot of fans of just some of these teams that might get upset about recruits and maybe especially in-state recruits not going to their schools, for a walk-on to stick around this long, especially with the walk-ons kind of losing, I wouldn't say value, but losing spots on the teams with roster limits changing. He maybe had opportunities to go somewhere else and play at a smaller school, but he stuck with it because he's a Mizzou guy through and through. Like you said, he's from the KC area. He said he was a Chiefs fan growing up. He was a Mizzou fan. He just wanted to play in the black and gold. And that's always, a really cool story to see when he beats the odds as a walk-on, but also beats the odds, against cancer and really, becomes like this idol for maybe a lot of kids that might be in similar spots. Any other just big takeaways from fall camp wrap up? It officially ended on Tuesday. We talked about the quarterback, talked about the offensive line, Logan Muckey as well. Any other just big takeaways, Kyle?
I think the biggest one was, Drinkwitz said he wanted to make it the toughest camp he's had with Mizzou. And he said, the combination of good on good reps, just total amount of periods, different workouts, all that type of stuff. Plus, there were a couple of heat waves that rolled through town that made it pretty tough out there. Said he achieved the goal. That was the hardest camp he's had, and I think Dalen Carnell said so too. This is his 5th one with Mizzou. And he said, yeah, definitely was the hardest out of them. And then Jalen Catalon said, it was the toughest of his. I think this is his 7th. I think 4 with Arkansas, 1 with Texas, 1 with UNLV. He said more so than the grind, it was because it's his last one, and he knew that, so he wanted to make the most out of it. But yeah, there was a lot of talk about just how tough this fall camp was. And I think, coming off of 2 double-digit win seasons and wanting to take that next step, kind of get over that hump into being one of the elite programs that really are fighting for the CFP, Drinkwitz knew he was going to have to challenge the guys, going to have to make it really tough, and, did his best he said, to break the guys on a couple of days. And said one of the days last week, he really, really tried to break them with a 2 a day and just couldn't do it.
I think a good positive out of that too, with a lot of those obstacles, and Drinkwitz mentioned it too, just on Saturday in Lindenwood, is that he took some helmets away from some players, made them respond to that adversity, and the chance that the situation that maybe they lose a safety, they lose a cornerback, they lose a receiver at some point in the season for a game or two. How will the other guys that are on that depth chart right behind them respond? And I think a positive from this that I took out of all of it is that he said this is like one of the healthiest units he's had coming out of fall camp. He's not expecting anyone to be injured going into week 1, which is massive. Because also when you play as team and you have a lot of respect for, not trying to dog on a smaller school like Central Arkansas, but you're going to see an opportunity for other guys to play that aren't just the starters, especially late into that contest. And, for a lot of those guys to be healthy, this might be one of their only games they see this season for maybe some of those freshmen or sophomores that aren't really high up on the 2 deep or high up on the depth chart. Kyle, we think we got everything kind of circled and checked off here from fall camp. Anything else that we missed? And if not, where can the people find you in your coverage as you continue on into the season?
I think we covered it pretty well. You can find, of course, all my work at Mizzou Today, but I'm Kyle_McAreavy on Twitter. That's MCAREAVY. It's a hard one to pronounce. I don't begrudge anybody who gets it wrong. And just follow along at Mizzou Today on, I guess X as well. There's all of our stories are put out there and on the site.
Kenny Van Doren, and I'll be your host. And we'll see you guys next Wednesday for a little preview for the Central Arkansas game. And then we'll get a recap or maybe just a preview for that KU game the following week. Until then, be safe. Thank you for listening.